Welcome back to the podcast community. Welcome back to the mother lover. Why can't you say it in order? Welcome back to the Cult Community Podcast. Nailed it. I'm the best at this. I am the best at this. Today, I don't have a plan of what we're going to talk about, but I do have an itchy inner elbow. So I think that's a really good sign for where this is going to go. So I did actually have two plans of what I was going to talk about, but one I can't because that will dock somebody else's pregnancy announcement. So we got to put that on the back burner. And the other is kind of a huge bummer. And I don't feel like being a huge bummer right now. Like, I'm going to save that for a special occasion. I'm going to wait until we're all very excited about something and then just drop that bomb on you guys. So I don't honestly know really what we're going to talk about. One of the considerations I had was to go through the first Cult Community podcast comment section and see what people wanted me to talk about there. The first one I picked up on for that was people asking to talk about my experience with hormone replacement therapy. No, I'm not transitioning to an opposite gender. I am transitioning from being a fertile myrtle to a barren desert woman. So, perimenopause, let's talk about that a little bit. My experience with perimenopause was that nobody talked about it, so I didn't know what I was going through. I didn't know perimenopause existed. I thought you were, you know, what is I am in puberty? No, it's not puberty. What are we? Menstruational? I thought I was cyclic, I'm fertile. I was, you know, and then suddenly it stops in your menopause. I knew menopause shift was hard, but I didn't know you pre-gamed it. I didn't know that you were like, yeah, let's freaking do this. Let's not eat. Let's drive to the stadium. Let's do shots in the parking lot, throw up, and then we can go to the game, right? I've never tailgated, so I don't really know what that's like. But I imagine it's puking in a parking lot. Okay, so once I did go to a football game in real life, and I feel this, I didn't have kids at the time, but now I feel that moment. I just feel it. Okay, so we were walking up and we were going to go to the stadium. And I think I had stopped because we were parked 100 million miles away. And I had stopped at porta potties on the way in or something like that, or maybe I didn't. And I saw a father arguing with his son, younger son, 7 or 8, right? And they were fighting, and the dad was really pissed. They had tailgated. He had put everything in the back of his truck, and then he went to shut the glass, and he was pissed at his kid. So we shut it, but something was sticking out, shattered the whole back window. And we were in San Francisco, which can't just leave things exposed like that. And you could see how mad he was and wanted to take it out on the kid, but also he knew it was his fault. So he couldn't say, you made me so mad I did this. So I just saw him hate everything. And they didn't go to that game. They would have been robbed. Anyways, what? So yeah, I remember that. That's that's perimenopause. That's what happens because you have that level of rage, but you can't take it out on your kids, even though they're right there making you want to scratch their faces off because everything makes you angry in perimenopause. So no one told me that was a thing. I get to get blindsided by that. And so my first real experiences with it is of course the extremely painful, extremely long, extremely aggressive periods that come with it where you're just like, am I dying? Is that what happened? What is this? It's a complete pivot from normality, and it just is so bizarre. And then you're like gaslighting yourself because I do want to talk about medical gaslighting, but you're gaslighting yourself because you've lived your whole life as a woman who keeps getting told by doctors that it's not that bad. That's not pain. That's pressure. You'll just feel a pinch. No, don't worry about it. Like your whole, especially when it comes to gynecological anything. Like the fact that they're inserting IUDs without any pain medication. And now they're like, oh, wait, people are passing out from the pain and vomiting from it. Oh, it might be painful. It's like they imagine we have no nerve centers in there and that just they can tell us it doesn't hurt and we have to believe them. And then, especially in childbirth where they're like, you're feeling a lot of pressure, and the moms are like, no, it's pain. I'm feeling pain. And they're like, I think it's pressure. And it's like, okay, what? I hate that. And it starts so young. I'm already going to bat for my daughters at doctors where the doctors are like, oh, it's not painful. Oh, it's not really that. And I'm like, they said it was. Why won't you believe them? They said, this is how I feel. My mic's not working. Damn it. I wonder if it was catching any of that audio. It was catching the audio. Congratulations. So, all right. Okay, maybe hot flash. Leave me alone. Okay, I'm not in my pajamas. This is a very fancy, formal evening gown. So, already going to bat with my daughters about this issue. I have worked as a doula I haven't done it in several years, but I did it for a long time. I was tired of seeing it there as well. And I saw it in both directions where they were being told it's not that bad, you're fine. And the absolute fear that mothers have going into pregnancy, like going into labor, that they're not guessing it right, that it's a false alarm. They're not actually in labor, that they're going to bother doctors, take their time. Everybody's going to be mad at them. And I think we instill that at a very young age. So I have really big issues with that. Like, another horrifying example for this is that I know somebody who has been feeling awful. And previously, like almost all women, the second they understand that you have previously had anxiety, that's it for you. That is it for you. There is no possible discomfort in your body that isn't anxiety and you're just overreacting. So she had clearly anxiety attack, went to the ER. They're like, it's anxiety. And she's like, something's wrong. Something else is going wrong. These are very rapid back to back. And they're like, Kevin, you tried calming down? You seem really spun up. And she got EKGs back both times. And she's had a previous EKG from just like a year or so ago. And when nobody told her, everybody had just like said, could you calm down? Like, stop being so dramatic about your life. Take some deep breaths and meditate. When she finally pulled the medical records from the emergency room and looked at them herself, very clearly on those EKGs, it references or echoes or something, but it references both reference abnormal one thing and signs of heart damage, cannot rule out heart attack. It can't say when that happens, but that it was there. Her EKG from about 2 years prior, normal heart, did not have heart damage noted twice. And so now with actual heart damage that she is not getting clear responses on, she can't follow up. She is still having chest pains, and she is telling herself that she thinks it might be anxiety. That's how bad it is for us, where we're like, no, I'm sure it's not that. I'm sure I'm just feeling a little bit anxious. And then, even with documented evidence, I just have a really hard time with things like this. It bothers me so much. Another example, I took one of my daughters to the doctor because she had told me several times, she said, I am unwell, I need a doctor. I'm scared something's wrong with me, I need a doctor. She had told me very clearly. So I took her to the doctor. The doctor did a very big intake thing and then asked for me to step outside. Never experienced that before. That was weird. But then said, first thing out of her mouth was, why did you bring her here today? Was it just to humor her? And I was like, right off the bat, swinging for the fences, right off the bat, like, it's anxiety for her. That's insane to me. That is insane to me. Instead of saying, I believe that maybe there's something wrong that's making your daughter feel unwell, they said, I think it's in her head. Maybe she should take some deep breaths and meditation. Like, it's just wild to me. And not only, it's wild to me. And there are other elements that we just like keep secrets from each other for some reason. Like, nobody wants to talk about it. Maybe it's because it's blood coming out of our bodies and it makes other people feel icky. And I'm sorry that it's icky, but it's normal and we need to talk about it more. So So in conclusion, my perimenopause was unfun. So in conclusion, I started having very aggressive, heavy periods that hurt. And I started having like really bad cramping during it. But then my really bad cramping happened at least 4 days prior. Once again, we were in that parking lot taking shots. We were pre-gaming my actual period. And it felt like I had my period. And then I got to have my period. Unpleasant. Did not appreciate that. So I went to, no, I ignored it. I was like, life is weird, right? And then I started gaslighting myself. That's what brought me to it, where I was like, maybe it's always been like this. Maybe it's always been that bad. Am I mistaken? Am I misremembering how my body felt for years? Is it me? Am I the problem? And I've never been the problem. So that was a crazy thing for me to think. So also, I started getting hot flashes. I knew really what hot flashes were from when I was breastfeeding, because early days in breastfeeding, you get hot flashes. That's fun. Also pregnancy. But I was getting hot flashes and I was like, okay, so this is hormonal. This feels like the change. That was the first thing that clued me in. I didn't understand that my emotional roller coaster of a life was also hormonal, because nobody told me, by the way, you're going to go unhinged, right? So I didn't understand that. The not sleeping, the waking up and doing my 3 a.m. side quest where I get to look through my house and see what's going on and stretch and socialize with my teenagers because they're up at that time too, it seems. Like, none of this was told to me. And I'm still finding out symptoms that are related. Now, I recently saw a doctor speaking on a podcast, so give that the weight that deserves, right? So grain of salt. I read most of a headline that perimenopause is the time frame that the vast majority of our opt-outs happen. We don't know it's coming. We feel insane. We can't handle the rage. We can't handle the depression. We can't handle the absolute horrific fights that we're picking with everybody in our family because, oh my God, all of this is going insane. And so we just end it, right? The statistics of that, like, it's the overwhelming time period, and yet we don't talk about it. It has been so recent that people are talking about perimenopause. I hate that for us. I hate it so much. So I was talking to my husband who was going for other treatments to this one doctor, and I love her. She's amazing. So he went for additional treatments, and this doctor is also a sex therapist, which is very funny to me. And so he was telling me that she was asking questions in her intake. It wasn't like, what's your blood pressure like? What's your diet like? What's this like? She asked things like, how connected do you feel with your wife? What levels of love, like feelings of love are you feeling? And not like she was like, do you love your wife? But like, on a scale from 1 to 10, how potent is the feeling inside your body? And he's basically a robot. So he was like, I love my wife, yes, but like, I don't feel like, ooh, butterflies and stuff like that's not something. She's like, oh, okay. So she prescribed him a compound from a specialist of oxytocin, as well as some other things for those, she's like, for those feel good attachment things, because in her humble opinion, as a sex therapist, when couples come out of that, oh my God, we're in the trenches of child rearing, when you are getting closer to where your kids are independent, like I don't have to see them probably for 3 days. I wouldn't have to see my kids for 3 days, and then they'd show up alive, healthy. I don't know if they've slept, but they could sustain themselves if they needed to. So you're losing that. We're in it and keeping things alive. We're not keeping things alive anymore. We're just trying to make them not horrible humans at this point. And then there will be an empty nest. So in the marriage, you can either come back and be a couple, or your roommates who were problem solving, but now you don't have a problem anymore. What's tethering you? So we can either grow back together and center on ourselves, or we can grow apart and either live comfortably apart or divorce. But that is where, so she really wanted to focus on things like that. And I was like, I'm in love with her. I'm in love with her. What's her name? So I went to her and I was like, I'm having these symptoms. And so she did a full panel of hormones for me. And that was the first time I had any idea that I was in full progesterone wise. I had none of it. I was full menopause with that. My estrogen was still doing its thing and my testosterone was a little bit low, but I had no progesterone. And that's why everything was so painful and so heavy, because my body had nothing to signal, maybe keep some of it in for a minute. Like maybe we tried to build this little nest just in case a baby comes out. So I had none of it and it was awful. So that's when I first started. I am very medication terrified. It's horrifyingly scary to me. And so we talked about either using the creams or pills. And I felt like if I had given myself the opportunity to use progesterone cream on myself, I would scrub the flesh off my body trying to remove it because I would start panicking. And then I got really anxious about the idea of transferring it to my husband or my son. And then they would have progesterone. I don't want that. So I understand that is not like a reasonable fear, but my fears aren't reasonable. I don't have rational fears, but they are fears. And so I mitigate whatever I can. Just like the zombies might not come, but I will be ready if they do. So I started on the pills and that very much helped. It helped balance some of my mood swings a little bit. It definitely took care of the pre-gaming cramping that I got. It did stabilize what my periods actually felt like, how long they were, and how often they showed up. It stabilized a lot of that, which I was very, very grateful for. I like grapes. So we did that and we let it go for a little while. And then when I came back and checked back in with her, she was like, okay, how are you feeling? Like motivation, how's your libido? How's all of these things? And I was like, I'm still very much on the couch. I still am very unmotivated to do things. And so she's like, great, let's try some testosterone. And I am like, okay, do I get a penis? Is my beard going to like get really lush and full? Am I going to get roid rage, which I get is not the same thing, but like, what if? I'm not going to sneeze. Okay. And so I was really, really scared and I didn't take the shot for a really long time. I held on to it for a little while. I did a lot of research and what pisses me off is in the United States, they're like, I don't know, man, that sounds sketchy as crap. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. And if you look at the European data, they're like, yeah, we've been doing it since the 80s. It's phenomenal. It's like a blessing for women going through perimenopause and menopause. And I absolutely hate that. I hate that America was like, oh, nah, they can raw dog it. Like, it's fine. It's just pressure. You'll feel a pinch. That's not pain. Like, it just feels like they're like, it doesn't matter if it hurts them. It drives them crazy. They have no desire to do anything physical, like emotional, intimate, or do any sort of activity anywhere. Like she doesn't want to do dishes either. Like just all of it. I hate that they were just like, it could be scary. Like what if everybody got a penis? Then how are we going to maintain the patriarchy, right? So eventually I finally do get the shot and I immediately think I'm dying. Because why not? But the next day, I feel really good because testosterone, for me and a lot of people, is a mood booster. I am so up and happy for a few days. Like I am motivated. I am driven. I could do so many things when the initial shot goes in. So I do it once every 2 weeks. It's a very small amount. I still don't have my penis, but who knows? I don't, perimenopause, because of the estrogen fluctuations, you do get a lot more peach fuzz. And I have not noticed an increase. Like I haven't noticed it becoming more beard-like. Like I was going to describe whiskers in such a good way. Like it doesn't feel like it's thicker, darker, more stubbly. Please hold. I need to cut out blowing my nose. So I don't experience any of that. Backtrack. When I started progesterone, I loved all of the stuff that it did for me, but I did notice that I was getting consistent migraines 2 days before my period started. And I could feel it coming on, and then it would be very significant and nothing would touch it. And then it would last about 24 hours, maybe a little bit less. And then I would have like hangover headache, just like the residual, oh my God, what was that in my head for the day? And then my period started and I felt fine. Testosterone does seem to mitigate that. It is not 100% that it will mitigate that, but it is a solid 83% statistic. That's statistics that I made up. And so that has significantly helped me as well. And so I do not like the migraines at all, but they are apparently extraordinarily common because just everything's fighting each other and your levels are nowhere near stable. And I hate that for me. So I really do enjoy supplementing what my body should be making and keeping it in a more balanced way. I don't know what the taper off looks like for that. And that's something I'm going to ask when I go back to the doctor. I don't know if it's something that you have to eventually just be like, okay, and then taper off of it, and then you're in menopause, or if my natural body hormones will stop needing it because I'm no longer in a place where I'm producing all of these others. I'm so grateful that there is a solution that can help me and that I'm capable of taking it. I'm really grateful that I don't freak out and like throw up my progesterone pills. And I do get a little bit of anxiety with the shot because you can't pull it back out of your system. And there's like a pellet form where they put it under your skin and then it slow releases. I was like, I feel like I'd dig that out. I feel like I would panic and try to claw it out of my body. So that's how I feel about that. And that is my answer to how do you like those pills? Okay. In the same vein, now I'm going to tell a few stories about, I don't know how to phrase it, how unfairly I think women's pain tolerance is treated. And I hate that it genuinely comes from, because I'm positive that God wasn't like, make them suffer. Maybe old school God did. I would have to ask the Jews. He did like making people suffer. But I don't know that in perpetuity, all women are supposed to feel pain all the time and we're supposed to think it's great. And then I do think the men of the church was like, yeah, suck it. That's hilarious to us. And it was like a sin to try to mitigate childbirth pain. What a fun thing for us. I'm sure all the men were just like, it's just pressure. Don't worry about it. But one example, and it bothered me so much. It was Sammy was 7 and we are at the public park, and it's a park that we could walk to from our house. And so we did it often. And there were some like jungle gym things. There were a couple swings, but there was this massive sand pit that had so many dump trucks because people would just bring their toy dump trucks and leave it in the sand pit. There was probably, I don't know, 40 to 50 of these toy Tonka dump trucks in the sandbox. And so kids would call it Dump Truck Park. And everybody loved going there. And it was like when your kid outgrew their dump truck, you just blessed it back forward to the rest of the community. And so they were always there. And there was this one large metal slide that you could slide down and then walk the stairs back up. But it was a really fun park. And so we walked there that day. Now, because there was a sandbox, everybody's kids take their shoes and socks off so that they can walk through the sand. And my kids were very much like that. They loved walking through the sand, so their shoes would immediately come off. And then they would continuously play without shoes on, where a lot of that looked like was me picking splinters out of their feet because the slides and the swings and the jungle gyms were over bark chips. So that was super fun. Sammy apparently had finished playing in the sandbox, went down the slide barefooted. One of her toenails caught on some part of the slide, but her body kept going. And about about 2/3 of the toenail was ripped up and off, but not 100%. And so lots of blood. We'd walk to the park, so we didn't drive. So I'm carrying my bleeding, screaming child while gathering other children of mine to be like, we must go home. I walked the dog there too. I also had a Rottweiler there. It was not pleasant. And so I get her, I take her to the emergency room because like, that's a lot of, I take her to urgent care, not the emergency room. My pediatrician was like an hour drive away and it was after hours. So we were going to go to urgent care. I wanted like painkillers for her. And what do you do with that? And so I went there and the doctors were like, were just kind of pretty rude. Right. And, but they were like, here's some topical spray that you can put on it. We're not going to remove the nail. We'll just tape it up and you need a tetanus shot. And I was like, it's not a puncture wound. And if she like had tetanus, they would have to, I was like, it's not a puncture wound. It was open and exposed to the air. And if she did have tetanus in her system, it would be tetanus antibodies at that point. It wouldn't be the preventative tetanus shot. And I don't feel comfortable just doing a shot without discussing it with my pediatrician. And so I went to, they're like, fine, you piece of crap mom. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, but thanks. And so I went to my pediatrician the next day. And Sammy had been in so much pain that night, like you can imagine, that's a torture technique. And the lidocaine was not really hitting it. And so she was getting some painkillers and getting lidocaine, but it wasn't helping. So we went to the pediatrician. Now, some of you might not know, but at this time, Sammy is very minimally verbal. And she definitely has no acknowledgement of any humans. Like adults are props to her. And they just happen to be background props. And heaven forbid the props interact with her. That is not acceptable. Like you're a prop, you're a stage prop. You don't have speaking lines in this play. So she was already scared and anxious. She does not really recognize other adults. Like there's no engagement there. And she is watching obsessively this one cartoon and it was dinosaur singing. And we were watching that on loop for 5 months. And so she's watching it. And this doctor comes in. It is not my doctor. It's not her doctor. We've never seen this man before in our lives. And he's like, could she, and they're well versed with special needs kids. That's why I go to this doctor that's an hour away. And so he's like, could she get off the iPad? And I'm like, sure. And then I was like, let's take a break. Her anxiety was so big. We had so much fear about what was going to happen next. And so like, she's barely holding it together. And he's like, oh, Sammy, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I'm your doctor's husband, but like, she couldn't be here because blah, blah. I was like, she does not give a fuck about your backstory, dude. She doesn't. Stop that. And so I didn't say that to his face. I was just like, oh, that's fine. We don't need to do that. She does not care about you. This is fine. Let's just talk about the toe. And so I get that that sounds rude, but don't worry. Like it's my memory making me ruder about that moment. Just wait for it. Okay. And so he looks at the toenail and he's like, yeah, it's still, it's partially got a little bit there. And he goes, yeah, it'll fall off on its own. But like, I kind of think we could just like rip it off. And I was like, you think we can just like rip it off? And he's like, yeah. I was like you would numb her up? And he's like, well, no, because it'd be real quick, and it'd be over. And I was like, okay. Your solution in this moment is for a autistic child who's scared of you, who is not processing what is going to happen next, who does not trust baseline adults or doctors because it's scary, but this place has a kind of a good track record, and so she came here willingly. You're willing to just rip off her toenail without any sort of pain management, and you think that's okay. You think that's okay. That is your next solution. And so we left and never went back. But like, I'm so mad. Hold on, my mouth went numb. Hold on. It's okay, Beth. It was a long time ago. You didn't let it happen. You advocated super hardcore. Don't worry about it. So that is what I mean by like, I feel like people think maybe because she couldn't advocate for herself super well, maybe because she was mostly nonverbal, that maybe she just wouldn't feel it and that it was fine. That, yeah, she would cry, but she wouldn't be able to articulate like, you asshole, that is literal torture that people do to get prisoners of war to talk, because she wouldn't be able to get that phrase out. It means it doesn't matter as much. Like, what do we, oh my God. Okay, so that's okay. I'm really, oh, my palms are sweating. I'm so mad. So that was part of how I feel about people gaslighting my kids, other women. Maybe it happens to men. I never accompany my husband to his medical appointments where I feel like they're gaslighting him. I feel like he's always taken very seriously. And my son, oh, I have another story about that. It's the one time I was taken relatively seriously. And I haven't experienced it with my son. I've never had somebody be like, do you think he's faking it? Like, do you think he made that up? Okay. So we struggle with our intuition is what I'm trying to say. I have two very important moments in my life where I was like, my mother's intuition is amazing and I will never ignore it. And I don't care if I go in and they're just like, oh yeah, you made that up. Okay. Here's my copay. Have a good day. So I will tell you about one with Sonia first because it matters for when I talk about the one with Calvin. So I was pregnant with Calvin and I noticed that Sonia, fully nonverbal, right? She is 2, almost turning 2, and she's nonverbal. We've lost all our words at this point. And it's really hard to get an idea of what's going on with her. When you have kids who are how my kids were, it's a wild guessing game of trying to figure out what is this. You know what? That's actually all parents, especially when you have babies. Are you hungry? Are you tired? How long has it been since you pooped? Do you know the last time she pooped? Maybe it hurts. Like maybe you haven't gone in a long time. Are you thirsty? Are you just bored? Is there a tag in your clothes that's bothering you and you can't articulate this really does not feel good? Is there a rock in your shoe? Those things, right? So, I had noticed that Sonia would often breathe weird to me. And it wasn't when she was active, when she was playing, when she was doing anything. Often it would be when she came up from a nap. And so I videotaped it because I wanted to be able to show the doctor, because kids never perform for the doctor. When you're like, do the weird thing, they never do the weird thing. So you're like describing it to them. And it feels like going into a mechanic shop when you're trying to describe the noise your car made. And you're like, no, it's kind of like this, you don't want that. Just film it. That's why cell phones were invented, probably. So I filmed it for her and she would do breathing like this. She would go like that, right? So like she would hold and then force out, force in. And so I brought it to the doctor, the pediatrician, and she was like, that is weird. Let's do an x-ray. So they did the x-ray. I remember being very pregnant. If you guys have ever seen a toddler chest x-ray, it's probably funny if you're not so full of pregnancy hormones, but I absolutely lost it. They put the kids' arms up and they put this clear plastic around them and they're stuck like this. And then they take pictures of their lungs. Sonia had pneumonia, which I like the rhyming. Sonia had pneumonia, so we put her on antibiotics. And so we went back and retested. Sonia has pneumonia. The antibiotics didn't help. We have to put her on different antibiotics. And then we go back and we test, and Sonia has pneumonia. By now, I am giving birth. Not there at the appointment. Like I I did it later. But we've been chasing this down for a little bit. And Mark took her to the third appointment. I might be misremembering this, so just pretend it all makes sense in a way. Calvin is born. I'm unable to go to the doctor because I had just had a C-section. And so Mark had gone to 2 appointments. First one he went, and the doctor's like, this is weird. It should have been cured. Just to be safe, like it looks like it's clearing up. Just to be safe, you need to go to the cardiologist. And then the next appointment he went, and this is because I thought she grunted weird when she breathed, was the cardiologist appointment where they did the scan of her heart, and there was a hole in her heart that you're born with it, and it closes naturally after birth, and hers never closed. And so the oxygenated and unoxygenated blood were kind of more flowy than they should be. Nothing was really sure. Her blood wasn't as oxygenated as it could have been. It is a pretty typical heart defect, and typical, like it's one of the more where you're like, oh, okay, and they have a solution for it. And so they were like, yeah, hole in her heart. That's weird. We have to do surgery on it. So she got surgery when Calvin was like, I was like 4 weeks postpartum. It was incredibly difficult for me to handle because there's no stable hormones in that. And it's really, really scary. And so they were just to go up her femoral artery, insert a screw into the heart, and it would close everything up. And it's fine. It's outpatient, basically. She would have been fine, except something got messed up in there and a screw got lodged. They had to go through a different vein than they anticipated to close the heart, to get the screw out. And then she had to be on really big blood thinners. And so she couldn't go home with us. So Mark had to spend the night in the hospital, and my baby was too small and I couldn't be there for her. And it was really, really difficult for me. She is fine. Oh my God. And then shut up. Okay. So, and then a few days later, from her heart surgery, she had a massive fever. And I'm like, oh my God, they left something inside her, right? Because I'm not normal. And this is in North Dakota. And it is 11 o'clock at night. Then I call the emergency room. And I say, hello, my daughter's 2 years old. She just had a heart procedure 3 days ago. And she has a fever. It's 103. What do I do? And the ER doctor's like, oh, gross. I do not deal with pediatrics. Please, I do not have an answer for that. That's crazy talk. I'm going to call pediatrics, the pediatrics on call. And so they call pediatrics on call, and pediatrics like, I don't know, man, that's dicey. I'm not a cardiologist. I don't particularly want to be a part of this. That is cardiology. And that doctor, they call him at home because he's not on call. He's my daughter's doctor. And he answers the phone at 11 and he calls me personally. And he goes, hey, what's going on? And I describe it to him. And he goes, I think we're okay. I don't think this is a big deal. But come into my office at 8 a.m. I will make sure that you are the first person I see. Don't worry about calling and making an appointment. Just go to the hospital, go up to cardio. I will see you. And so the next morning I go to cardio and I'm waiting in the waiting room, and he comes into the waiting room, looks at me and goes, I just got here. I'm not in my office yet. I just want you to know I'm here. I think you're going to be okay. I'll see you in a minute. And I was like, this is amazing, right? And we got in there and she had strep. She just got strep. It wasn't anything toxic, stuff like that. So that was well treated, but that was incredible to me. I just wanted to put that story in there, even though it's not relevant. Okay, so that's my intuition for that. Got us there. I chased it down. They were like, really, it wouldn't have become a problem until it became a big problem much later when there was like too much strain on her heart. Yikes. So then a few years later, Calvin is 2.5. I think he's in the 2.5, 3 range. I'm going to say 2.5. And yes, 3. He's 3. It's important that you guys know he's 3. He's 3. Because he was in daycare, because I had a conversation later with daycare. And he had a spot on his leg that was weird. And I obsessed over it. It's a weekend. And I'm obsessed. And maybe it was a Friday. And I keep staring at it. And I'm like Googling reverse image searching, putting in any parameter I could think. I start texting it to a nurse that I know. And then after a little bit, he has 3 spots on his leg. And I am like, you know what this is? Bed bugs. We have bed bugs. We did it. We got bed bugs later down the road. It sucked. That's not this. So I am like, this is weird. This is weird. It's uncomfortable. And I obsess about it for about 6 hours. And I cannot stop thinking about these spots. They're bothering me like crazy. And the nurse is like, I don't know, that doesn't really look like much. And I'm like, it's much. It's much. It has to be much. I don't feel right. And so I finally tell my husband, I'm like, listen, urgent care is going to close. I need to go before it closes. And so he's like, okay, princess overreactor. And so I go to urgent care and I get right in. And I go, spots, right? Oh my God. And he takes, I'm sure it wasn't a shot glass because that would have been so inappropriate, but it was a glass clear, like shot glass. Like he was pre-gaming his menstrual cycle, I guess. And he put it over the spots on Calvin's leg. And then he pulled it right off and goes, go to the emergency room. I'm going to let him know you're coming. And I was like, those are words you love. Those are words you love. And he goes, listen, it could be a not that big of a deal, but this could be a huge deal. Go to the ER. So I went to the ER and it takes a really long time. And I'm not going to say the word right because I can't remember it correctly, but these spots were coming up and he's like, it might be meningitis, which, oh my God, but it wasn't. And so I go and we get seen and it is called Heinrich-Schullinger's purpura. That's not correct, but if you type in something reasonably close to that, it will populate in Google, I'm sure. And it is when you get, you're ill, you get a cold or something like that. So there's like a trigger event and then your blood just decides it hates itself and just starts exploding everywhere. So it was tiny little ruptures of his capillaries bursting in his leg. And, it can come in 2 forms where it can come into where it primarily affects your kidneys or your pancreas. Now, the pancreas one is absolutely devastating, usually kills your pancreas. You usually have to get a pancreatic transplant. No bueno. And so they are like, we got to see which one it is. Please wait. And so it takes a while to run those labs. And we had the kidney version. And they're like, it's going to start looking really bad. Also, we have to refer him to a pediatric nephrologist, which is in South Dakota. We were in North Dakota. And you have to have his urine tested basically daily to see if his kidneys are shutting down. So like the next morning, all of the blood vessels in his legs and arms basically ruptured. It was insane. The amount of speckled bruising, it was crazy. I wish I took pictures of it, but I didn't, or at least I don't have access to them. But it was, if I had woken up to that, I wouldn't have handled it well. And so we had to do, I think like daily urine testing for a while. And then I was able to go once a week with his urine. Then I was able to go monthly with his urine. And then finally we were given the blessing that we were no longer concerned about his kidney shutting down. And they were like, one thing, like where they were letting me home, they're like, oh, actually one more thing, really quick. All of his organs might like rupture. You'll know if it happens. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, he'll like vomit blood and there's like a lot of pain. You'll know and you'll have to come in. And I was just like, yeah, that could have gone without saying. My kid vomiting blood, I'd take him to the ER. If he's screaming, like, so then when I'm dropping him off at daycare, I was like, oh, real quick, if he starts vomiting blood and screaming, it's because his organs are rupturing. You should take him to the ER. Fun. So those were 2 moments where I was just like, this doesn't feel right. And it really instilled so much confidence in myself, which is unnecessary. I have so much confidence in myself anyways, but medically speaking, for my kids that I am just like, yeah, you bet. Let's go. Let's see what this is. And that was one of the few times I wasn't gaslit. And I love that for myself. But just so many other times, I don't know. I just hate that those, like, I have to hold up two shining examples of when I was listened to and it wasn't me playing make believe. But then often I will go in and I'm like, when it comes to me personally, I think, is it make believe? Am I telling myself one thing or the other? And it's so hard. And I don't, maybe that also damaged me where I was like, no, I was super, super valid in these two things. So for sure there are worms in my brain on this thing. Like I stumbled over the word worms in my brain. Clearly, let's get that scan going. Like, I wonder if it reinforced some of my crazy. No, you're gaslighting. Stop that, Elizabeth. You're valid. All of your complaints are valid. And that's what I wanted to talk about today was like my whole feelings on this. And then I wanted to tell you those stories because they came up because I had absolutely no plan for this. And I just want to see what stories come up in my head. Yeah, let's just do like a call for interaction. Tell me your crazy story of when you were super, super valid. Like, it just sucks so much when you're finally, there's a point where you're like relieved something's wrong with you because at least you're not crazy. My friend was like, I'd feel better if I had a heart attack because then at least I could be like, told you so to everyone else. That's sad to me. And I am fully prepared to give the world's best eulogy when her heart explodes. It's gonna be about me. Don't worry about it. But I'll throw in like a few compliments, but really it's my time to shine. Like I will have an audience, a captive audience. What are they gonna do? Walk out? Doubtful. And they're gonna be like, she's gonna wrap up soon, or she's gonna reference her friend soon. Like they don't know it's 45 minutes and it's about me the whole time. They don't know. Captive. I wonder if you could just yank the mic too. Like I could start just going to wakes and be like, I have a story real quick. And then I just talk about me for 45 minutes. What are they going to do? Nothing. Probably won't even notice because they're all so sad anyways. I'm a bad person. I'm definitely going to purgatory for a little bit. Well, that's fine. The rest of you guys are too. All right. That's all I have for you. And I love you. Bye.